Another area that we look at is planning and organizing. I said before, this was a weakness for you 7 years ago. You could get distracted, you could get sidetracked, and sometimes you could come into a dead end. Just your planning stops for some reason. So this time round, what we looked at, one aspect is your ability to think a problem through and use feedback. And that shows up now as being about average. You know, last time we did this, it showed up as being impaired. So that's definitely an improvement.
Well, I had a problem there because given the guidelines for that test, I felt the guidelines were rigid, and
Absolutely.
it went beyond a certain point, and I said, no, those guidelines, I interpreted the guidelines wrong. I got to change it, and I rethought it. But
and I think that's a big difference from 7 years ago.
yeah, denial.
This time around, you're able to step back and think, where am I going wrong?
Yeah.
You know, and 7 years ago, I think you were able to explain to me where I was going wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And that is a difference. That starts to get a little bit into what we call perspective taking. What's this other person up to? Now, another test that we did this time round that we didn't do last time round, we did a test of your ability to listen to a tape recording and pick up someone else's emotion. Now has to do, I usually put it under planning. It has a little to do with planning. It calls on the planning aspects on the right side of the brain. It also has a lot to do with how you deal with other people and how easy or difficult it is for you to respond to feedback. And what showed up there is that this shows up as being impaired compared to what I'd expect. Again, that goes back to that notion where it's harder for you to just automatically step into someone else's head, you know, and pick up, you know, instinctively, oh, they must be feeling sad, or they must be feeling happy. You know, now, it's something you have to think about, and it's something you have to make the time to think about. If you don't take the time to think about it, you know, I think the question may not come up to you, or you may just assume, you know, just off the cuff, that this person is, you know, as thrilled as I am about this, or, you know, whatever else.
No, I notice sort of what I call disconnects at times with people there, and I'm just, you know, it's just a normal conversation. It's I can't find a way to fit into the conversation, or I'm saying something and the other person just, I can tell I've lost them. That's when I go back to fall back on the questioning them, because I just don't know what I don't read, not reading them properly, and I don't know. But if you realize that exists, if you realize that there's something wrong with you that way, it's far less frustrating than just trying to carry on.
Absolutely. And that gets into planning to say, how am I going to plan for this?
Yeah.
You know, how can I check?
Yeah.
You know, how can I see that I'm on the same page?
Yeah, that's where if I'm getting to know someone well, I just simply explain, this is what I do, so please don't be irritated by it. And,
yeah.
And that's why I'm doing it. So.
And one of the things that you know, shows up for folks who have this difficulty and don't know it, you know, and most folks who have this difficulty don't know it, you know, the way their brain is wired, it's very, very tough to know it. Okay? And so they come across as being, you know, oftentimes insensitive or selfish or uncaring.
Yeah.
You know, not because they want to, but because they're missing some vital information.
that other people see.
Yeah, and I know,
Or feel.
you know, I've known people and I've seen people professionally who have this difficulty, you know, and even if everything else is fine, but they have this difficulty and they don't know it, that can make it very, very hard for things like employment. You know,
Yeah.
Nobody wants to work with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, if you do know this, then it becomes something, you know, it becomes an intellectual activity. You think your way through it. You think to yourself, it's a lot more important to ask questions, you know. So tell me about your holiday. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
What did you do?
Yeah.
And you know, asking questions is one of the most important ways that we can show interest in someone else and start to build up in our head sort of that little model of how are they doing right now? What's their interest? Is there something, you know, that I can add either to the conversation or, you know, to our discussion that's going to be useful for them and for me.
Well, I try hard not to be verbose, as Carol Lawson described it, verbose.
Yes.
And try for at least a balance where if I'm in conversation, I'm not talking more than half the time. So at least try to talk less than that.
And that's really important to, again, to keep this in check, because when you're talking more than half the time, you know, you're not getting information about the other person, you know, and perhaps they're not getting the information from you that you really want to give them.
Yeah.
So, the next area that I looked at is your mood, your coping, your overall level of distress. And I'll just do this in conversation here because it's pretty tough to put that on the board. What showed up is that first off, you know, compared to 7 years ago, you report more distress, more things that are a difficulty, and more impact from that. Now, 7 years ago, you reported very little distress. My big concern 7 years ago was there was a lot going on in your life that you weren't paying attention to. You were missing some pretty important things that you should be concerned about. Now, I'd look at that and I'd say, I think you're paying attention to the important things. There are some things in your life that cause you distress. There are some things in your life that you want to improve. There are some things in your life that you need to pay attention to. And you're doing a lot better job of that now. So instead of glossing over and saying, well, that was just a glitch and it's not a problem, you're saying, well, that happened again. I need to keep working on this so it doesn't, you know, stay a problem. So the sense that I'd make out of that is that you're paying attention to some pretty important things in your life now.
Well, I guess in that process, in the past, it was like I could control and fix things, whatever it was, whatever. Now I realize, to thine own self be true, it's what kind of I do individually. I can't do with other people's lives.
Yeah. And controlling and fixing may not be the phrase right now. It may be controlling and managing.
Yeah.
The thing that you can control, the thing that you can manage is yourself.
Yeah.
Your own reactions.
Yeah.
The world has to look after itself.
Yeah. Manages. Yeah.
So overall, looking at this compared to 7 years ago, I see quite a lot of progress. And I think that progress is happening two ways. One, there's a bit of natural recovery. The other, that's even more important, is that you've been working on this. When it comes to memory, you're using strategies. You're thinking, how can I remember this better? How can I organize it? When it comes to planning, you're using strategies. You're thinking, am I thinking this through the right way? Is it going as I predicted? If it's not going as I predicted, what's going on here? In terms of attention, I think your scanning is probably more systematic. All of these are really important things, and because they're strategies, it means you're putting your mind to it to make your daily functioning better. The only thing that looks like it's decreased is thinking speed, and that's not consistent either. That shows up on one task, but on tasks of generation, for example, coming up with words, that's thinking speed to do with words, your performance is actually a little improved. So I think, to my mind, the best explanation for this is probably fatigue. This is a test we do a little later in the day, and so it may well be that you're starting to get tired, you're starting to slow down. Fatigue doesn't affect knowledge nearly so much, or reasoning, but it does affect thinking speed. And as I've said about your response to questions about mood, coping, day-to-day difficulties, the fact that you're reporting more difficulties says to me that that's actually a good thing, because you're paying more attention to day-to-day life. You're saying, what's the world like? Not, what do I want the world to be like?
Well, Dr. Longman, in my work, or when I'm doing projects, and I've been able to hold on to Shaw GMC as a kind of a major commercial account, what I find is if I'm focused on my task and don't have other things going on, I'm just thinking along those lines, that I've come up with some pretty exceptional stuff that impress other people. So
Good.
I'm
And that's
focused and thinking about what I'm doing.
Yeah, and that also says to me that your attention can work well. As I said, your attention can work very well when you put your effort to it. It works even better when you eliminate distractions, when you can focus on just one thing at a time. Then you can call all your reasoning skills into play. And, well, I listen to this show on the radio that talks about advertising, and one of the things they keep talking about is keeping your customer in mind.
Yeah.
When you're doing something there, you're not doing this. What would I enjoy doing? What does the customer need? And that goes back to this notion here of planning, awareness of others. It's not an easy thing. It's not an instinctive thing for you now. What makes it easier is keeping focused, asking that question, and asking that question out loud.
What makes it easier is, you can't fix something that you don't know is wrong. And what makes it easier is realizing that that's wrong, that I'm not the way I was. And so, okay, so how do I manage it?
And I see that as probably being the biggest difference from 7 years ago. 7 years ago, you weren't looking for what was wrong.
No, I was normal. Still.
Yeah. And now you're saying, this is something that's more difficult for me, so I do it differently, and this is what I do.
Yeah. That's the way to put it.
And, it's like having glasses. You don't spend all your time saying, well, I'm going to, I don't want to wear glasses, so I'll just go without them. You say, well, I need glasses. All right. I make sure that, I put them on the bedside table so they're there in the morning, and I make sure that I wear them all the time that I need them, and that's just the way that it is. It's kind of nice by being able to read, to see birds, to drive, to do all the rest of that. So that's the story as I'm getting it. What have I missed? What details do you want to know more about?
Well, taste and smell. When I studied the Neuropsych more, there's this back area that apparently was like a whiplash thing.
Yeah.
And I haven't come across any way of improving it or managing that. So.
Yeah. So I'll pull this up here. So this is an underside view of your brain, and these yellow things right here, these are the olfactory nerves, the nerves from your brain through your nose. When folks go through a high-speed crash or a fall, smell can definitely be affected, and the way it can be affected two ways. One is these nerves go through small holes in your skull, if your brain shakes around in your head, the nerves can be broken right off where they pass through that hole.
Mm.
And when that happens, people lose their sense of smell. If the nerve is completely cut off, then the sense of smell is gone. And it's very, very difficult for the nerve to regenerate. It just doesn't seem to happen because too many good things have to happen all at once.
Yeah.
It's a little like winning the lottery.
Yeah, no, it's just not there.
Yeah. And so, and when that's happened, your brain isn't getting the smell signals. Now, I read something, recently, probably about 6 months or so ago, that was talking about people who've had loss of smell. For example, zinc lozenges that people are promoting for colds, or a zinc nasal spray. One of the side effects of that for some people is that it can actually kill the olfactory nerve. People can take these lozenges or use this nasal spray and lose their sense of smell, which is a very unexpected side effect. But that leaves people very often with a sense of taste. Not always, but often. But your sense of taste in day-to-day life, better than half of it is also your sense of smell.
Oh, okay.
Because if you're eating hot food, the vapors are rising up, and you're smelling it. So that adds a lot of the depth, the complexity to the foods, especially warm foods. But cold foods, may retain a little more of their, the taste that you used to. But not always.
It's just I'm overweight anyway, and I put a chunk back on, but I was, with my daughter's help, I was successful in taking off 70 pounds, and really it's just mush, one way or another. So.
Yeah. So choose your mush, right?
Yeah.
What's the healthy
just put in the healthy mush and treat it like fuel, and look for enjoyment in other ways. And
some people find, for example, that their sense of taste is altered. So the tastes that really show up for them are sweet and salt. And some people tell me, you know what? I really have a liking nowadays for potato chips and pancakes with maple syrup. They're nice, strong tastes, and they taste pretty much the same. The problem is that when you look at the nutritional value of potato chips and pancakes with maple syrup, they're giving you too much of the wrong things.
Just mush and crunch and maple syrup it's just all gone.
Okay.
And there's something back here, this part. I don't know, I read in one of the things that taste and smell come in that area too.
And for taste, that ends up going through this area back here, the brainstem, and then up through the middle of the brain. And so, absolutely, when you've gone through a high-speed crash, there can often be bruising down here in the brainstem, and that will affect sense of taste. So it does get important. Yes, if it's fuel, what works? What's the best regimen for you? And what works so you don't have to carry quite so much of you around.
Yeah, that's the target nowadays.
Yeah,
getting that back down to where it should be.
Some people find that one of the things that adds a little pleasure to eating is that they've actually end up using their imagination a bit more. If you go back, if you imagine, remember what fresh peas taste like, or remember what chocolate ice cream tastes like.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Yeah,
and people do find that they can go back, they can use that memory of what something tastes like, prime their brain that way, and then taste it. And this is all happening in the brain anyway. So if you call up an old memory, you can call that up, and it goes along with the experience in your mouth. So it's adding some of that taste back. Sort of like most of us find when we look in the mirror. Well, we're probably not looking at ourselves right as we are today. We're mixing that a little bit with our memory of looking in the mirror 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So that again, you're using that exact same experience. You can be seeing the things that you really enjoy seeing in the mirror, and not worrying about quite so many of the additions from age.
Yeah.
So that's what I have to know about taste and smell. As I say, sort of imagining the taste in advance can really be helpful there. What other questions do you have? What else?
Oh, just in the process sort of self-awareness, Carol and I have been involved in the legalities of divorce, and the property settlement's in order, and the divorce is impending, but it's like I don't feel I'm well, and I'm able to perceive from her the things I should perceive, and I don't really feel she's well. So we've both in discussions, maybe some third-party counseling could be helpful. Was that available through this site?
As far as I know, I don't think it's available through the health region when it comes to specific issues around things such as divorce. Carol Lawson will actually know much more about that than I will. But I do know that if it's not available through the health region, there's other opportunities such as the Calgary Counseling Center.
Yeah, I've accessed that before. So and then Carol is getting counseling, and she was going to ask today too. So just given my background, it'd be useful if it's really not. We've been through the divorce and separation side, and it's been so long. It's just a double check. Should we, at this stage, is there any cohesive thing that should keep us together? Because there seems to be like other forces at play. My extended health care is global, and we were able to get a plus in our settlement, so that that's turned into a bit of a win circumstance for both of us. So
good.
So.
And I think that is where having somebody who can be a mediator, an outside party, to say, okay, now from where I sit, you've covered these details. You haven't mentioned this detail.
Because
is that important?
The financial is all legally done.
Yeah.
So that's done. So now it's just that's all out of the picture. So mediators normally are in this area.
Yeah.
So this is just.
Okay. Yeah, and
straight counseling, I guess. So.
Okay, and I also think that that's where, that counseling aspect. These are your concerns. What are the concerns that you don't normally say? Or other things such as that. That get into that counseling. Where does this go interpersonally?
Yeah, well, that's where I really. As I've been exposed to it, they're just, like that, and they don't really realize what my impairment is. So so somebody to be counseling in this situation needs to understand.
Yes.
So but I think I can explain myself now, and this gives me more strength to be able to explain it. Will I be getting this in writing as before?
Absolutely. You'll be getting the copy of the report as you've asked for. Is there anybody else who should be getting a copy of this report?
Oh well,
Dr. McGovern, I know.
Dr. Cribb.
Okay. going through our pile of paperwork. So we have Dr. Cribb, you, Dr. McGovern.
Yeah, I believe that's it. I'm slated to see Dr. McGovern in July.
Okay.
And I think of balance as well, but I want to see if I can improve on that a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, if you were to work on improving anything, I think most of your strategies are doing well. I think you might want to keep practicing on measures of thinking speed, doing simple things, doing them more and more quickly, and find out for your own satisfaction if that's a difficulty or if it's just, a glitch on one day on one of our tests. If it's a difficulty, then you can work out how to deal with it. If it's a glitch on one day on one of our tests, then you know it's not a difficulty, and it doesn't need to be something that you dwell on.
well, I think I deal with that now when I'm trying to deal with something and there's other distractions going on, that I shut out other things and come back to it.
Focus on one thing at a time.
Yeah, and I ride a motorcycle now, and I scan all the way around, and I really try to be conscious of what the other drivers are doing.
And when you're riding in traffic,
I try to avoid that, but I've had circumstances where they just wipe over, and I've been used to my bike, so I can maneuver out of the way.
and it's always useful to give yourself a few extra feet, because distance is time.
So back to the counseling question, is Carol Lawson a source that could be available, possibly?
I don't know, but if she is, then she'll be able to answer that. And if she's not, she has a better idea. I trust Carol to know all of the resources that are available in the city, including some that don't even advertise.
Okay.
Thank you. I hope this is helpful.
Well, that's wonderful. I should have just focused on your face, because I can take a picture of this, and then I'll have it. So are we through here, I
I'd
guess?
say we're through.